Everyone, all the executive, and now we would like to start the sessions on the first discussions about setting the scene of blue carbons. We would have a common understanding about blue carbons. So which area in Thailand that have the potentials for the blue carbons, and what's the roles of the seagrass bed in the sequestations of carbon dioxide, and what are the mechanisms and the policy we have in place for blue carbons. And for the first sessions, we've been honored by Professor Seagrass Prathong from the Faculty of Science, Prince Songkhla University, who would be our moderators. And if those of you who's here in the conference room, if you have questions, we would have the microphone to pass to you. You can raise your hands and ask the questions after the presentations. And also, for the participant in Zoom application, you can leave your messages and questions in the chat box as well. We have a team who gathers the questions and would bring to the moderators and speakers. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Professor Seagrass, please. A round of applause for Professor Seagrass.
Yes, good morning, the executives, distinguished guests. I am Seagrass Prathong. I'm the moderator for the first session today. The first session will start with setting the scene of blue carbon to see what the understanding of it is. And this morning's panel is Mr. Apishai Ekavanakul and Dr. Ponsi Sutanarak, the Deputy Directors of the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources. May I invite Mr. Apishai and Dr. Ponsi to the stage, please. The next panelist, we have a Assistant Professor Dr. Anchana Pratev, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Science, who have did deep research on seagrass. She will be providing the information on seagrass and blue carbon sequestration. The next panelist is Dr. Phutipa Rodkitikul from the Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization, who will be talking about the TGHO roles in supporting policy and mechanism of carbon credit in Thailand. We have about 1 hour and 13 minutes for this session. We will start with Mr. Apishai Ekavanakul, who is the Deputy Director of the DMCR. He will be talking about the mangrove forest, but in the view of blue carbon credits of the mangrove and the directions that follows the policy, the national policy. Where are we heading, as well as the role of the private sector, who will help assist us in driving the blue carbon policy, especially the questions that I have heard of the ratio of carbon credit, 100%, 90%, 70% between the DMRC and the DMCR and the various private sector. Dr. Apishai, please.
Thank you very much to the professors, and I would like to say good morning to everyone who's here in the conference room and also on the Zoom in a multiple channel. I heard that there's also in different channel for the broadcasting. Actually, today's activities on behalf of the DMCR we together with IUCN and Dow Thailand to organize, to tell the story that it's a focus to everyone right now, from the situations of climate change and the impact in the global level, and the flooding, drought, and the flash flooding, landslide, global warming. All these issues of climate changes are the situation that we need to come together to find solutions. Blue carbons that we are here today to talk about, how could it contribute? Would it be able to reduce with the mitigations to reduce the CO2 emissions? In blue carbon, aside from the mangrove ecosystem resources and the marsh lands and peatland and tidal marshes, it helps lessen the impact on the greenhouse gas as well. Actually, for the DMCR, we have a main missions already in the responsibilities for the marine and coastal resources, and the resources that is directly linked with blue carbon, about for mangrove forests, ocean resources, coastal resources, and the tidal marshes. For the first part, I would just like to stress on the mangrove forest, because it would be able to help as mitigations for CO2 emissions. And for the part about other emissions that our department is in charge of, about the seagrass bed, Dr. Ponsi would be telling you about that. When we talk about mangrove forests, it's a resource that's extremely important and valuable in different dimensions, both for the economics, social benefit, and environmentals. You would see that mangrove forests are very valuable, not just about economic, about the livelihood of the people. And one important is that it's a nursery for the aquatic babies animal, the fish that we eating, the shrimp, the crab. Without the mangrove forest, it would be difficult for those aquatic animals to breed, to be generating revenue for the community at the coastal area, to generate revenue for the supply chain, for example. So we would like to focus on the importance of the mitigation of CO2 emission. It could store, absorb, and sequester the CO2 to reduce the impact on climate change. Actually, for the mangrove forest, the whole world area is 92.41 million rai for the global level. And in the ASEAN level, in Asia, it's about 52 million rai. And for Thailand, the area for the mangrove forest in Thailand is 2.86 million rai. But the one that's really maintained its status, its conditions, from the collections of information since the year 1961, it's about 2 million rai, and a little bit more. And in the years 1983 onward, it's been a crisis on the degradations of the mangrove forest. But then after the DMCR started working on this issue on the year 2003, our department has been established in the year 2002. We have these missions to increase the networking and to create the incentive and raise awareness of the coastal area community. And lots of the stakeholders see the importance of mangrove forests, and the latest information from the data collections of the good conditions of the mangrove forest. The latest one, together with GISTA, we survey for the year 2020. We are pleased to see that there is about 1.7 million rai increase of the mangrove forest from the previous one in 2014. It is spreading in Thai Gulf and Andaman. Andaman is more, it's about 1.3 million rai, and Thai Gulf about 300 to 400,000 rai. So these are the general information. Actually, the DMCR have the target for restoration. We have the Also in our 20 years national strategy to increase the area of the mangrove forest and about 100,000 million rai. But 100,000 rai. Now we achieved that. We have both the work in for the CSR in our fiscal years and together with the other private sector. So we achieve about 100,000, right? And so the target is 200,000, right? So we have corporations from the community, from all the stakeholders all over the countries, and also the private sector and organizations who become more alert. And so they help us with the restorations of the forest. And now we have 1.7 million rai as informed before. And the point that the professors asked at first that for the mangrove forest, the MONRE, the Ministry of Natural Resources, and the DMCR, what are the directions and the policy involved in these issues? Since the Prime Minister's General Prayut Chan-o-cha has declared at the Glasgow COP22 on the carbon neutrality and net zeros in the year 2050 and 2065, our ministers, Waraput Silpachas, really see the importance of finding the solutions for lessening the impact on the climate change, on mitigation and adaptation. So he assigned the three main departments to work on this, and the forestry is important in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. And also we see the important issues. And so DNP, the Department of National Park, Department of Forestry, and DMCR has been assigned to create projects to get collaborations from all the sectors, both from the private sectors, from the community, to have the participations in the effort. So the DMCR welcome this policy and work on it. And we established a number of projects, which is the reforestation of mangrove forests for carbon credit. We set up the target for 10 years to increase the 300,000 rai for mangrove forests to support the climate change impact and also for the mitigation measures. For the 300,000 rai in 10 years, in the year 2022, the DMCR issues of regulations to allow the communities and private sector to take part. The regulation has two sides. So it means that previously we have 2 million mangrove forests, and then it's been damaged during the shrimp farm. Yes, during the crisis of the 1991, and then we get the area back and we start to grow the mangrove forest in the past 10 years. We restore it. Yeah, so the target is 300,000 rai. Now it's in a good condition is 1.7 million rai. We need 1.3 million rai to go back to 2 million rai previously. So the area that the DMCR would be working on for the restorations effort is the area that we receive back from the aqua farming, the shrimp farming. That would be the activity that destroy the mangrove forest ecosystem. So we got them back to do the reforestations, and also the area that we seized back that would do the different kind of palm plantations. So we would be rehabilitated area. And another area that we see that if we could achieve the target to really restore the green area and the mangrove forest, what we need to expedite is the extended mud area. They would be the one that behind the bamboo fences and has the potentials to do more forestations for the mangrove forest. So this is also the target area, and it's the area that the community has, the existing community also taking care of. And for the year 2022, we have the target to restore the area for the institution and other sectors is 44,000 rai, and for the community also 44,000 rai. It's about half and half between the private sectors and the community. And this part For our implementation, the DMCR would invite the interested parties to submit a project to the department to be a co-developers of the project. And there's two sides, as I explained. One is to allow the private sectors to support on the financial basis for the work. Actually, for the project implementation, is the implementation by the DMCR, by the private sectors and other stakeholders who would like to support the project. It would be on the financial side. And another side is the community on the coastal area with the existing network, with the volunteers who's already doing the forest maintenance. We would also engage with them to work with us. They could also submit the project to the DMCR. How can they do that? So after project proposal to the DMCR, after receiving approval from the DMCR for both the private sectors and the communities, we would have all the officer designated to all the locations, because it has to be done also on the academic term. Which species are suitable for which topography, how about maintenance, how about how to take care of it. It has to be scientific based also for the restorations. So we would assign the officer designated to all the plot to give recommendation, to do monitoring and evaluation, to track the progress. So after the private sector invests and the communities, what would the community get? And we have a clear framework on we have the ratios from the committees on the carbon credits sharing. Carbon credits, just as the number of the speaker has already raised about the background, and also the TGO. The directors would also be able to help supplement more information about the carbon credit that would be translated into the financials or asset that would generate revenue for the community, for the project developers. So, and the ratio for the sharing of the benefit. After the forest has been planted, what would you get? You get carbon credit. And the ratio is that for the investor, the privates, and the investor got 90. And for those who got 90, the department would get 10 out of it. And the first regulations for the private sectors who would get 90%, and the department get 10%. And the department would give to the local government authorities for 5%. So the department would just have the remaining 5%. And the community who join force in the project, the community would get 90s and the department would get 10, according to our regulations. Because this project, assigning the focus on how to enable the community people to be alert, to be aware about the restorations of the forest maintenance, we would like them to really get the benefit from their effort as well. Carbon credits that the community and the people receive is like an add-on bonus. If it's a pristine forest or the forest that's been restored, what they get is that the ecosystem. And they get more green area, they get more better livelihood, they get more resources, they get job creations. That would be the main benefit. So this is like an add-on bonus. So the utilizations, can they cut it? Can they use it? In the case of carbon credit, but if it's an existing community would like to use some tree for the fishing gear, etc. I would like to say that there are two parts of the location. One for the private sectors that are joining with us. It's the area that all the plot would belong to the DMCR. It would be the public spaces. For the existing community, can just continue with their own livelihood. There's no obstacle, there's no fencing, there's no blocking or anything. But you need to utilize it by the conservative measure without destroying anything, without being in violation of any logging law or forestry law. But if you ask if there's necessary to use some resources, DMCR look at it that the community can set up their own agreement. They could monitor themselves that if they really need it, it could be allowed per the circumstances. That is our framework. And what I would like to also stress for the participants and the listener is that the DMCR really put a lot of focus that the participants who grow the forest in the area have to employ the local community only. If you plant in Chanthaburi, you have to employ Chanthaburi people only. We will not bring any worker from Bangkok to plant. If you plant in Stool, it has to be Stool community who you employ, because we want to generate revenue for the local community, and so that they would have the ownership of the area, and that they would, see their effort and appreciate it. And the clear benefit for the mangrove reforestation is definitely we have more forests, and in a quick, expedite manner. It's already been booked up, 44,000 million 44,000 right already been booked up, and so we can scale up our work very quickly. And second, it saved the budget from the government sectors about 600 to 700 million baht per year. We can save significantly. We need to thank the private sectors and other stakeholders also to see the importance of the mangrove ecosystem and all this carbon credit, the ecosystem, and the job creation and revenue. It opened up more participatory approach as well. So that is the gist of the project. If the private sectors say that they have to do maintenance, right? So if any plot already received concessions, already received the deeds or the right, how long do they need to take care of it? Well, previously we have to accept that if it's a private sector, they do it as a CSR basis. They grow a bed and put a placard, a vinyl, take photo, and never take care of it. They never see whether the tree would survive, whether they would grow, and would just grow it without having any effective outcome. But this project, we specify that at the minimum, they have to take care of this for 10 years. After the first year, the second years to the 6 years, they have to do maintenance, replantings, and the 7 to 10 years, the communities have to do the monitorings and surveillance as well. And we extended it. If any private sectors want to extend it, they can extend it up to 30 years so that the forest would be maintained in the pristine conditions. And you can use the carbon credit generated as well. So thank you so much. We received the perspective regarding the mangrove forest and about the background. This is something we've been trying to work on for so long for the restorations of mangrove forests, and now we added the dimensions of blue carbon into it as a part of the incentive to mobilize more activities and more budgeting, more financial support from the private sector as well. So we would move. And if the participants have some questions, you can prepare it, and after the sessions we would come back again for another discussions. And next I would like to invite the Dr. Ponsi from the DMCR as well to talk about the seagrass bed. We start to know about seagrass beds for 30 years ago. I remember because at that time I was studying about this. So the Deputy DG Ponsi, please. Thank you so much to Ajahn Sakanan, Professor Sakanan, and I also would like to thank all the stakeholders, our partner who's here and also online. For the seagrass dimensions, personally for myself, for seagrass, the work on blue carbon is a bit delay or behind comparing to the mangrove forest. Mangrove forest, the DMCR has been working on it quite extensively. But for the trend, for the interest, for the achievement and the opportunity that we see the opportunities and also the potentials that we could incorporate blue carbons in the seagrass ecosystem, as would be context that could turn into a great opportunities for resources management. It's about restorations, maintenance, restore And also we would like to create carbon credit system as well. This is what I would like to say. In the morning, everyone here, Dr. Sanit already, or Dr. Jindo, talk about the ecosystem that is a terrestrial. So this slide would show you the 3 bars. The 3 bars show that for the terrestrial forest, the rate of the carbon sequestration or carbon sequestration rate is lower comparing to the 2 blue carbon on the right hand side. The next one is mangrove, and the last one is seagrass. For both the land forests, the carbon sequestration rate is lower, but the underground and the sedimentations, the ecosystem of mangrove and seagrass have a higher carbon deposit. The rate is higher and the carbon extractions from the environment are higher as well. So this is a clear evidence. And I would like to inform you that if we look at the overview, this is the distributions of seagrass bed in the global level. At the global level, we see that if we make a comparison with the mangrove forest, it would be in the tropical zone. But if it's seagrass bed, it's distributed all over the world. And the dot that you see, the green dot that you see, highlight the countries that have the seagrass bed. The brown one is a growing seagrass, especially for Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Australia, Oceania, including America and even Europe. But it would be the seagrass in a different ecosystem. So let's take a look at Thailand. This is a research by the DMCR that we've been conducting. We have 12 types of seagrass that we've been tested and observed. And we found that the carbon sequestrations that been absorbed by the seagrass, both by the root system and by the trunk and the leaf system. The blue one is a research that the underground carbons and the underground carbons, it's about 50-50, almost about the same. So this is just a backnest or the seagrass but the one important point that we need to talk about is carbon sequestrations, or to extract the carbon and store it in the sedimentations or soil sediment. So this is very important. We can take a look at the carbon that had been sequestered. How much is that? What's the volume? And we summarize that for the above ground and underground, the biomass sequestration in total is 0.56 ton carbon per right per year. This information is the current years that we've been conducting this research. 0.56 might not seem a lot just for the biomass, but for the underground carbon, we are now doing it, experimenting and study, and the papers or the research would be launched in the near futures. So I would like to encourage you to keep an eye on it. So let's take a look at the comparisons. For the underground, the one that I said is important and we lack the clear informations, we use the configurations of the IPCC to capture the rate of the sequestrations of the seagrass, and the IPCC is about 10 plus or 10 plus minus 10 tons carbon per right per year. That's a research piece. I would like to quote Dr. Anchana research that the area in Indonesia, it's a paper that Dr. Anchana reviewed. they found that the sediment in Indonesia that has a higher unit, and Myanmar as well, and China is lower. And when we plus the one that we get at 0.56 on the ground, and the biomass and the information of the IPCC in the sediment is a 10. So it's 10.56 plus or minus. This is the first information that we believe is very important, that we can make a decisions on the implementation and action on seagrass, on the direction we should go. On the right hand side, we obtain the information from the mud forest. We found that the biomass for the biomass sequestations, the rate is quite high also. We are not including the soil sedimentation because we're still waiting for the result. But we can assume that it is high also in the soil sedimentations. But the important thing is that we use IPCC for the seagrass is 10. We might get more than that. This is why we're now doing the research to make sure. And we are waiting for the result. So if I may ask you, so it means that the underground one, the mud, the organic substance is important, not just the seagrass, right? Yes, exactly. The previous slide, the first couple of slides, you will see that for the sedimentation is important. In the sediment, it might not come from that location, but it might come from the riverway flooding it. It has different organic that will be accumulated at the different alley. And also the leaf of the seagrass, the leaf of the mangrove forest that's been collected. So the research say that it could be like how many hundreds of years. So this is the potentials of blue carbons. It's not a carbon that just happened, but it's been accumulated for a really long time. So this ecosystem, no matter it's mangrove or seagrass or the one that Dr. Sanit said about seaweed, algae, are very important that Thailand need to make an attention to and generate a number to make it clear, to have an evidence base. So it means that it's not just about seagrass, but if it's seagrass near the mangrove forest, there is those biomass from the mangrove forest would be sequestered also in the seagrass. Yes, from the mangrove to the seagrass. So when we look at it, we would not just look at the dimension of mangrove forest and seagrass bed separately, but if it's in the same location, we have to see the connectivity between the two systems. So this is something we need to bear in mind. So if you are working in the ecosystems, we will see the interconnections between this ecosystem. So when we have the blue carbon that is gaining traction and interest, DMCR have the methodology for calculations, a formula for calculating for the research, so that we can have the carbon unit. We work together with TGO. We draft the manual for the research so that it would be standardized. Because right now, the researchers in Thailand, they've been focusing on the seagrass for a couple of years now. Professor Anjana been working on this for many, many years. And I am in the DMCR. We see the paper to ask for the grant for the researchers always, but the methodologies are different. So that's why we need to normalize the methods. And this is what the DMCR has been initiating, the standardized research, the method, and then we would be mobilizing this and advancing this. So let's have a look at the seagrass in Thailand. Where do we have them? If you're interested in the report of the status that the DMCR has created every year, it would specify where the seagrass is spreading all over the country as shown in the slide, and which area has the highest density of seagrass. That would be in Andaman. Andaman has the highest one. If you see from the slide, you will see the color that is a light green. The dark green is at Trang and Phang and Krabi. We will see that a lot. We see also in Ranong and also Thai Gulf, we also found a number of seagrass beds. And in the area that we survey and conduct a study is about 100,000 rai, 103,000 rai. We collect the information for more than 10 years since the year 2007. But for the coverage of each location are differing. It's mean that the area of the seagrass that grow naturally are not 100%. It's about like a spot, it's a patches. So the coverage is about 30%. And we also always recheck to see whether it's a good condition, middle, or excellent. So this is existing information. And also for pushing forward for blue carbon, we will utilize these information to jumpstart our initiative. So if you look at the potential area for the blue carbon, there's another set of information. The potential area for blue carbon for seagrass, we defined it that it would be the area that used to exist but no longer. It disappear by the degradations of the environment, etc. That's about 50,000 rai that disappearing. So when we calculate this, the number at the beginning, we calculated into blue carbon, and we found that the opportunity that we could gain blue carbon from this potential area, it's mean we need to take action on it. We need to plant seagrass, we need to do conservation measures, and this is the target that we set up for. The department is also working on these issues. Previously, we worked on conservations, but now this is the information that we bring in as an input for the discussions on the directions for blue carbon. We study for the directions on restoring seagrass, both by the replanting. But for the replanting, is that where do we get the breeding one, or do we do the seedling? How we germinating it? So especially for Phang Nga Gulf, Songkhla, Lagoon, Talet Bay, and also Thung Maha, Thung Wong Thong, to the eastern side, there's a studies about the replanting. And this is another area that we are having an experiment. This is at Ban Bang Plat in Phang Nga. It has no seagrass previously, but we try two ways. One is replanting, and second one is germinating from the seed. And we found that it could grow. In the 3 years, the growth rate is higher as well. So it's proof that what we can bring, the knowledge, the academic knowledge, we can help us with the germinating and also planting. And this area, we have many objectives for planting seagrass. The first one is that, so there would be community engagement. We would like to see also whether the community can take care of it, and also with our ecosystem, we can collect scientific information. And at the same time, we also want to check the potentials and the possibilities in growing seagrass beds so that it would lead to blue carbon. And I would not go deep into this slide, but I would like to say that for Bang Pat area, we found that we've been doing since the year 2018 until now, we found that in the first years and until the third years, the first year we start growing until the last year, which is the third year, we see the survival rate for the first year is 100%, right? And the second years, it was about 70% that die, surviving 30%. But after that, the year 2, year 3, it would still survive as well. And the important point is that each shoot would expand, it would grow. If that shoot die, it die, but the one that alive, it expand, it germinate more. So it's proof that it could exist in the ecosystem in that location. So the possibility for us to restore the seagrass or to replant or to have a new area for seagrass to make blue carbons possibilities. This is a research piece as well, that we plant seagrass together. We see that it's possible to make a combination of two types of seagrass as well, so it could coexist and grow well together. So this is the participation of the community. As informed since the morning, everyone mentions about this. Dr. Dindo also said, how do we work? Blue carbons or the work of IUCN or the work of the DMCR. It has to be done together with other stakeholders. We're not walking this path alone. Participation of the community is extremely vital. Participation from private sectors also valuable. So I would like to thank Dow for inviting us here today and see the importance of blue carbons. And for the government policy, we would also push forward for blue carbon, and there would be more clarities and a clearer pictures and framework, just like mangrove forests as well. And that is all from my part. Thank you.
ขอบคุณท่านรองนะครับ
Thank you so much, the Deputy Director General. You have left us with so many questions also. The importance of the seagrass, the various strains, how we can grow it. We will have a point of view from an academician who has worked so long. How do you measure the carbon on the soil? What are the costs? And how can you add on to this panel discussion? We are providing a lot of importance to seagrass. We work a lot of times in the mangrove in Thailand, but seagrass is quite new and we require a lot of academic information. I would like to invite Ajahn Anchana to explain to us about seagrass and carbon sequestration. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you IUCN and Dow who have invited us here and also provide a lot of importance to blue carbon. One thing is I want all of you to back up and look at this from a distance. It's all is a nature-based solution. You know, blue carbon is just one part of it. It's like an ecosystem service. So our view comes from the academicians who are researchers who work with me. The first time I've heard about blue carbon was when we had an international seagrass convention, and we said, oh, this is an opportunity. So I've been exploring this and it's been 12 years already that I've looked at blue carbon. So once we start to kick it off, we have this research in our pockets, and once you match up with the word nature-based solution, it will be the opportunity for Thailand. I want you point this out. This is a hotspot for diversity. Seagrass is one thing, mangrove forest is another point, coral reef is another point. Take a deep breath, back up. This is the opportunity for Thailand as a whole. And especially with blue carbon, you know, it's even a bigger opportunity for Thailand. So it is great to have this panel here, because from the academic point of view, you can only focus on academic knowledge. But we have stakeholders who are great and important part of the jigsaw. And we want to create this and flagship this as our main agenda on the global stage. We want to use nature-based solution. We want to encourage the country and to become aware of these resources, and the participation of the private sector is great as well. So I want you to look at the overview. This is not a new slide. When we're talking about ecosystem service, the Mariam incident with the dugong, you can explain to the person, anyone, that blue carbon is a small part of the blue carbon service. We can highlight the seagrass. I say the underappreciated seagrass ecosystem because it usually comes last, but this is great to be holding it up to the limelight. We are not looking only at the ecosystem service, we are also looking at the livelihood. And this is something in the fisheries and tourism, because it is a hotspot. This is all because of the blue carbon spotlight. So I want you all to see this from an overview and to have a whole holistic understanding before we go on a deep dive. You grow the grass for the dugong as well, not simply to sequester the carbon. You should look at it as an ecosystem service as well. Okay. Now, the Deputy Director General has talked about this hotspot on biodiversity. We have a variety of seagrass. You have to understand the role of each of the tribes. I think the Enhalus acroboditus, this is one type. They sequester a lot of the carbon. This is different from the ovalis, the Halophila ovalis. Each one have a different role. So if you go deep down as to what you are going to plant, the species will play a big role. And in thinking about this, as mentioned, there were 12 species. If you look at the sizing, it's different, large, medium, and small. And you can separate them out. And we believe that each species play a different role on that. So come back to this slide, this very hot slide on blue carbon. If on one side you're talking about restoration, you grow, you replant, but if you don't conserve, that's how you lose carbon as well. So this is another point in which you have to focus on. Planting is extremely vital in areas where there is no plants, but in another dimension, you have to conserve, you have to protect it from being destroyed. That is also carbon sequestration. These are the hot issues because the amount of the carbon sequester in these plants and the soil is a lot compared to just a normal forest. And as I mentioned, it is Thailand's opportunity because we have these resources at our fingertips. Now, say if I am an ecologist, when you look down, you have to find the linkages and you have to understand the ecosystem services. You have the mangrove forest, we have the seagrass, one type of seagrass or mix. We have unhealthy seagrass, we have the seagrass halimedia, as well as we have the seagrass, which is coral. Nothing stands alone. Everything is interconnected. So when you pick a flower, the universe is affected. So you can see the carbon coming down and slide down. So the Enhalus that we know, they should be able to trap a lot of the carbon. Look at the sea. The sea comes down, that has been collected there, but it slides down. We also have IC, which is inorganic carbon. We have not talked about this a lot. We don't talk about it because it's not stable. It might not be sequestered as well as other carbon. But this is also another opportunity. We have Halimeda seagrass, which grows very fast and can sequester carbon a lot. These are unique in Thailand. It's an opportunity for Thailand. A lot of times we follow the behind foreign trends, but we should look back into our resources and what it's capable of doing. We have to look at the importance, the interconnectivity, and the various roles. Excuse me, I am very interested in this picture because usually, the seagrass and the coral, you have to say seagrass is protecting the corals too, right? The collection of the carbon will actually be useful or vital from the coral. Yes, definitely, yes. There is that dimension. As you know, everything is interconnected. The seagrass, one duty is to filter everything. We'll filter the plastic. The same way the mangrove filters the plastic, it filters the nutrients and it filters the sediment. So it has other capacity that has potential, and this is quite enchanting. This is how the resources is valuable, not just simply the carbon sequestration. Now, we talk about the methodology. This is a methodology that we use from an international standard point of view. The picture you see here is the video when we work in Trang, which is a hotspot. And it is a great area, which is our biodiversity hotspot. There is a standard method for sediment collection, 1 meter, how do you cut through the soil, and then how do you process it further. So these standards are important. Otherwise, the quality of the carbon sink, we cannot compare to any carbon credit. TGO has a standard method, which we have to understand quite completely in order to work. Otherwise, you would waste your effort. And we also need to reaffirm that we have understanding, we have alignments, we have publication that is well aligned to TGO standards. So please don't worry, because it is a standard method that is used all over the world. But I will leave the video here. They are short videos, about 3 minutes. And you can see the coastal blue carbon picture. And there will be numbers that we have findings from our research. We're so lucky to have Trang. We have the Safe Andaman group, who and we also work with the community. We are academicians, and we finally have to end up in the lab. But the community, we have to make them understand how do you collect the core, 1 meter deep, so on and so forth. If you are interested, please let us know. We are willing to become mentors. We can set up workshops for you. These are standard methods. I think mangroves for us, for the collection, is the same. We have another opportunity on the peatland, and this is a concept that we are still exploring. This is the methodology. Now, these images come from the research. The researcher is with us and working with us. Healthy seagrass, the amount of carbon collected is higher than the unhealthy seagrass. The uniform seagrass can collect higher carbon than the mixed seagrass, but there is a type of complexity. Therefore, the capability for collecting carbon is higher as well. Now, I work from the lab position where I'm working with seagrass. I work with Halimeda. It grows very well, it collects lime, but can you count it as a carbon sequestration plant? It's quite debatable. But if you look at the other side, they have a great capability, but it might be different from the blue carbon concept that we are talking about now. This is a research project we're working on. There is another dimension. You're talking about the carbon source. Where does it come from? We use the stabiliscope. This is in Phuket's work, but it is in Ao Kham Bay, a very small bay. You can see the carbon source, which differs a lot. So if you want to drive this blue carbon project, you might have to go into that area and collect the data first as to where the carbon sources, the process for conservation, what should be done. So you have to take up research. I want to provide you with confidence on the seagrass research in Thailand. If you look in Southeast Asia, our research on blue carbon, seagrass, we are on par. We are one of the leaders in Southeast Asia. When you're talking about blue carbon, we're talking in the past decade, and it's a hot issue about climate change, blue carbon. So I want all of the sectors to be confident that this is based on research, based on science and methodology. If you're interested, we have the numbers and the data who can claim it, and you can take it into the carbon credit scheme quite confidently. So this is another example of the time which we have worked. We used Libong Island in Trang province. Safe Andaman is a very important partner. Somrom Lak Libong is another part which we work with. Once you enter, you can see the differences in the amount of seagrass. Once the seagrass has been reduced, the carbon sequestration is lowered as well. If you don't conserve, certainly it's a risk. You don't talk about storage. The conservation, which is actually quite low cost, and all partners can come in, but we have not mentioned about that. I would like to underline this. So this comes from research, and it's all interrelated. This is a graphical extract. In the community, there's a lot of development. If it's developed, the seagrass will be affected. This is another research I want to point out. It's something that we did with several friends in Southeast Asia, looking at the potential of seagrass for carbon sequestration in the area. If we don't do anything, if it's business as usual, the seagrass amount will be reduced. But if you do something, or we have an intervention, that will contribute to about 6 to 7% of carbon reduction goals. That's why we're here today. We want to move towards carbon neutrality. So these numbers I can provide you with, and I can point out to you that we place ourselves and position ourselves in Southeast Asia and our opportunity. This is an overview, and that is what we want to show you, that there are research, and it's an occasion to have the mangrove forest under the nature-based solution, under the roadmap towards carbon neutrality. That's what I want to provide, and an overview. It's a great occasion today because we have so many stakeholders from so many sectors, and it's a good stage for exchanges. As an academic, I will try and create a roadmap. We have policies, but we have to focus on what research we're going to work on, where should the committees engage, where would be this direction of the policy. And once you've worked with me for 5 years, then you can see how nature-based solution can fulfill the gaps in the eco-based services for the country. So finally, the concept on wetland restoration and conservation is extremely important. So we should position ourselves, but everything, as I mentioned, is a good opportunity for Thailand. Thank you very much for your discussion.
Thank you very much for opening up the new perspective regarding seagrass. I believe a number of you might probably just hear it about the blue carbon formulations and the way we collected information is different. We have to be able to separate what is the already been trapped underground and what is the actions of seagrass for the first, second, and third year. So the way to calculate that, it has to be certified or have to be standardized by the academic sense. So it should be also developed to the carbon credits policy for the countries, and might be even the leading policy for other countries also. So we'll come back to the TGO. For the perspective on the management in the past, that would also starting from the ecosystem on the ground. So that now that you're shifting to the marine ecosystem as well, what are the directions? What is the dimension you want to look for? Thank you very much, Professor. So first of all, I would like to thank IUCN and Dow at DMCR for allowing TGO to participate in sharing the information about the roles, responsibility, and our support in the participation on the mitigations and the CO2 sequestations. The first pictures I would like to highlight. Actually, we talk about the Thailand's targets for many times already. So we have the target to achieve the carbon neutralities in the year 2050 and aim for the net zero greenhouse gas emissions in the year 2065. One of the goals that is important that would enable us to the carbon neutrality and net zero is the CO2 sequestrations. With the inventories of the countries in the year 2016, Thailand has sequestered CO2 as 91 million tons. We have the goals for 2037 for the CO2 removal of 120 million tons. So it's about 30 million tons CO2 equivalents more. And the forestry is playing an extremely important role in these sequestrations of CO2 emissions. For the national strategies, we have intention to increase the forest area to be the carbon sink, both for the natural forest, economic forest, and the green area in the urban and rural zone. You see it in the slide for the mangrove forest is also important. Just as the Deputy DG said, in 10 years we plan to increase about 300 million rai, and this is the measure to support the countries to achieve the carbon neutrals and net zero. For the TGO, we developed the projects on Thailand Voluntary Emission Reductions Programs, or TVERD. It's a mechanism of a carbon credit or crediting mechanism that would support and as an incentive for participations in the mitigations of greenhouse gas emissions. Before we might grow forests or take part in some activities, but as Dr. Pichai said, it might be just 1 year or two and stop. But if you join carbon credits, it has to be constant monitoring and also to really measure the carbon that's been absorbed. What we get from the project is that it would create an incentive and help with the restorations of the forest. For carbon credits, how do we calculate that? This morning, the director already mentioned a few bits about it. The carbon credits, the area of the decreased carbons or carbon absorbed from the TVER activities and already been certified by the TGO. The carbon credits per TVER is unit, a ton carbon CO2 equivalent. On the right hand side is the calculation formula. We have to see the existing area, whether it's an area with trees or the plain area, empty land. So if it's an empty land, but then you plant it and then maintain it, and then the trees are growing, the added carbon sequestered would be carbon credit that you could be traded. But in the case that it's already a tree existing, so you have to see the baseline carbon sequestration, and the increase after your maintenance, that would be the carbon credit. Right now, TGO developed the TVER methodologies for the greenhouse gas mitigation. There's 61 methods for the energy sectors, for the renewable energies, energy efficiency, waste management, forestry, agriculturals. So in the forestry, we have 9 methods. You can take a look at the activities, whether it's in alignment to the methodology, whether what you're doing now is in alignment with the methodologies or not. If it is, you can use it for the calculation. And the development of TVER, there's 2 main parts. The first one is to register for the project. One, we have to consider the scope of the project and arrange for the proposal documentations. In the document would be the activities details, and also to have the calculations of the mitigation of CO2 or CO2 sequestration. And also we have to verify the feasibility by the third party, which are the outside stakeholder who register with TGO. and then to register the project as a T-work project. And afterward, for the second session, which is the validating or refining the amount of carbon credits, we have to monitor the results of the activity, how much carbon mitigation can you gain, and also get a third party to do the validations and to ask for the carbon credit certificate. It's a carbon credit that could be used for trading later on. And on this slide is the direction for calculation. We have to look at the baseline, whether there's any CO2 sequestration at first. And after the activity has been conducted, how much more can you absorb the CO2? So that would be the carbon credit. For the forestry, there would be just different sources. We have 5 carbon pools. One is above ground biomass, below ground biomass, dead wood, litters, and soil. So this is the part that we can calculate to see the amount of carbon credit generated from the project. The methodology for calculations, we have to see the baseline, whether it's an empty land or the land with forest or tree. If it's already have standing trees in it, you have to see the baseline number, and then after you do the maintenance of planting, and we recommend that 3 to 5 years we do one validations, because for the ease of validation it's quite costly, so you need to think about the cost effectiveness also for your part, and also ask for the accreditations of the carbon credit. At the time for the forestry would be 10 years. So the project for TIWA would support the monitoring and the maintenance in a continuous and consistency manner, because if you don't take out your tree, you won't gain any carbon credits. And for the T-work methodologies, we have 2 groups. On the left-hand side is an existing methodology for the sustainable forestry, middle size, a small size, and large size. And so mitigations from the deforestations and degradations of the forest, and to increase the carbon sequestration in the area. So the terrestrial forest and mangrove forest can use this one. This is a standard T-work. We have developed it on the reference to CDM. But right now, there's a need to develop it to the higher level, to the advanced, so it would be more meticulous way of calculation for methodology. So we developed the right-hand side, which is a mangrove forest, and also the restorations of mangrove forest and seagrass that the Deputy DG has already mentioned. So we work together with DMCR. And also with Professor Anjana. Professor assists us in developing this method of calculation. And these are the details. I would not go into this detail. If you're interested in this, you can approach TGO and talk to us. We have the detail of what methodology you should use for your forestation project. For the first FOR 01 is a small-scale forestry that is not exceeding 16 CO2 equivalent absorption. But if it's a large one, it's more than 12,000 CO2 equivalent absorption. So this is the criteria. It has to be plant and maintenance and management in the right way. No logging in the 10 years. And the minimum area is 10 rai. And in the case FOR 02, it has to be forest area that had the tendency to be degrading, and it would turn into a non-forest. So you maintain it, you restore it, so that you stop the degradations and then increase more sequestration of the carbon. And for the activity for the mangrove forest, it's of course reforestation. It has to be standing tree, and it has to be the species according to the location. So you can use the methodology that's shown on the screen. Another methodology is to restore the mangrove forest and seagrass. It would be the activity that you're doing, for example, planting the trees in the mangrove forest or seagrass, restoring, working on the hydrologicals, sediment management to prepare the area to be suitable, and that it could sequester more CO2. For the regulations involved, the Deputy DG Apichai already mentions, we want to support and promote more forestations. So we discussed with involving agency, and we proposed to the Policy Committee on Climate Change already, and there's an acknowledgement, and TGOs would be assigned to discuss with relating agency to launch more regulations. And DMCR also have this regulation in place about the carbon credit sharing. So if the supports from the private sectors for the forestation, they would get 90% of the carbon credit, and DMCR would get 10%. And this is a statistic of the T-World project. We've been working since the year 2014 until now. We have 298 projects, and the amount of GHG reduction expected would be 10 million CO2 equivalent per year. And from 298 projects, there's the one that been certified is 135 projects, and the amount that been certified is 11.8 CO2 equivalent. And if you look at the separations of the projects, mostly would be renewable, 140 projects, and mostly the solar cell. We have or PV, we have the 36 forestry project, and the amount of the expected CO2 would be 300 tons CO2 equivalent. So now that we see the register, we see that until the end, until the certify of the carbon credit, we have 135 that been certified, mostly the RE, 64 projects from RE. For forestry, already 3 projects. And you might say, why that only 3 projects from forestry sector? We have to inform you it's lengthy. It takes time for the tree to grow so that it would worth it for the carbon credit validation. So that's why it takes longer time than renewable energy or waste energy. So we have the 3 projects from the forest sectors, and the one that the certified greenhouse gas emission that been issued is 2,241 CO2 equivalent. So what about the mangrove forest project? We have one now. That is from the DMCR, and they register as a T-word. The project is called the pilot projects for the carbon sequestration of mangrove forests in the area of the DMCR. So it's under the forestation for the conservation, restorations of the watershed forest, mangrove forest, and to prevent the forest fire. It's about 700 rai in Chanthaburi and Rat provinces. And the methodology is for the sustainable reforestation, and the amount of CO2 expected to sequestered is 1,935 CO2 ton carbon dioxide equivalent. So this is already the registered project, and we do hope that there would be more projects for mangrove forests and seagrass to register, because now we have more on the terrestrial forest, and blue carbon is really coming a hot trend. So we do hope to have more projects registered with us, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Actually, we have about 4 minutes to 5 minutes left. I know there are some questions from Zoom, or anyone who are sitting here who wants to ask. Are there any questions? Who is holding? There are 2 questions from online. What is the area that is ready for planting? What does this mean? Yes, the Deputy DG would like to answer. Actually, I'm going to explain. Those are the area which is the target area that we aim for rehabilitation. We have claimed this land, reclaimed this land, and a legal decision has been reached. Everything has been prepared in order for planting. So these are the areas which were formerly destroyed, right, or cut down or encroached upon. We have removed all the buildings, and it's ready to be regrown as a mangrove forest. The specific location for Phang Nga province, what do you mean by this? Let me talk about the mangrove forest. For Phang Nga, there are 2 types of areas. The first area is when we have outsiders who come in. There are areas that are ready for planting or areas that are where buildings are being removed. Secondly, it's the community mangrove forest has been looked after by the community. Then you can actually assess the carbon sequestration. Both parts, once you come and join the project must be registered with the TGO for certification and assessment, as the doctor has mentioned by the Dr. Putipur. What about the area in the national parks? Those national parks are areas which they have determined according to appropriateness. The community mangrove, which belongs to the Department of Forestry, they are appropriate, but after population growth and after regrowth, after we have removed human intervention and have sustained regrowth, then they can be taken. In Phanga area, we are working on 20 rai of land, and we found that these seagrass can be grown or mangrove. There are areas where we have never seen seagrass, but it is an experimental area. If it is an open land that no seagrass has been found, but we can see the potential as a plot where we can plant them for further regrowth, we will move in. Now, if the community or the neighborhood can see areas that have potential for regrowth of these mangroves or forests, please inform us or tell us. There are areas which have not been left out of survey, so let us know, and then we will go and take a look. The third question, TVER credit, can you include that in the carbon exposure project? In terms of TVER credit, the first benefit is to use it as offset for agencies or persons who wish to be carbon neutral. You can use this as to offset your carbon credit. Secondly, you can use it for annual report or sustainability report or CDP or carbon disclosure project or DJSI. You can use this for report and sustainability report of the agency. Thank you very much. All right, so in the morning it's very academic. It's about knowledge on carbon credit and also policy and direction of the country in moving towards assessments of these carbon credit as blue carbon. So I would like to thank all the panelists. I think we are right on time. We will start the next session in a few minutes. Thank you very much, all the panelists. Thank you very much, Mr. Apishai, Dr. Ponsi, Dr. Anshana, and Dr. Putipar. Now we will have a short break, about 5 minutes, and please come back in. You can bring in the coffee and tea and the break into the room. We will see you in 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
โปรเจกต์นี้นะครับแก้ปัญหาเรื่องโลกร้อนแก้ปัญหาขยะพลาสติกและขณะเดียวกันสร้างเศรษฐกิจชุมชนการปลูกป่าในวันนี้เราไม่ได้มาปลูกป่าเพียงวันเดียวนะครับเรายังต้องการสร้างคาร์บอนเครดิตซิสเต็มคาร์บอนเครดิตซิสเต็มนี้จะช่วยให้ชุมชนออกมาดูแลป่าโครงการด้วยกันแล้วชุมชนก็จะได้รับรายได้จากการช่วยกันดูแลป่าโครงการส่วนนี้นะครับตรงนี้เนี่ยจะเป็นการแก้ปัญหา3อย่างพร้อมๆกันคือเรื่อง global warming เรื่อง plastic waste และเป็นการสร้างรายได้ ให้กับชุมชนเป็นการช่วยสร้างเศรษฐกิจชุมชนขึ้นมาด้วยนะครับนอกจากนี้แล้วยังเป็นการสร้าง Blue Carbon Destination ซึ่งเป็นแหล่งท่องเที่ยวให้มีนักท่องเที่ยวมาชมพื้นที่เหล่านี้มาใช้จ่ายในบริเวณนี้ชาวบ้านก็จะได้รับรายได้เกิดขึ้นครับทั้งหมดนี้เป็นการช่วยผลักดันเป้าหมายการทำงานด้านความยั่งยืนของดาวครับ
ทรัพยากรธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมปัจจัยในการดำรงอยู่ของสรรพชีวิตและมีความเกี่ยวข้องอย่างมีนัยสำคัญในด้านเศรษฐกิจและสังคมกระทรวงทรัพยากรธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมนำโดยนายวราวุฒิศิลปะอาชารัฐมนตรีว่าการกระทรวงทรัพยากรธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมและนายจตุพรบุรุษพัฒน์ปลัดกระทรวงทรัพยากรธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมได้ให้ความสำคัญในการจัดการอนุรักษ์และการใช้ประโยชน์ทรัพยากรธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมเพื่อให้เกิดความสมดุลและยั่งยืนและมีนโยบายทส1เดียวและทสยกกำลัง X มุ่งสู่วิสัยทัศน์ประชาชนมีคุณภาพชีวิตที่ดีตามแนววิถีใหม่ภายใต้ทรัพยากรธรรมชาติและสิ่งแวดล้อมที่ยั่งยืนจากพื้นที่ชายฝั่งสู่ท้องทะเลของประเทศไทยกรมทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งได้เดินหน้าปฏิบัติหน้าที่ตามพันธกิจในการดูแลอนุรักษ์ทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งตามแนวทางและนโยบายของกระทรวงโดยเดินหน้าปฏิบัติภารกิจด้วยความมุ่งมั่นตั้งใจซึ่งผลการดำเนินงานในปีงบประมาณพุทธศักราช 2565 มีดังนี้ป่าชายเลนกรมทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งร่วมกับจิสดาถ่ายภาพดาวเทียมความละเอียดสูงพบพื้นที่ป่าชายเลน 1.75 ล้านไร่เพิ่มจากเดิม 200,000 ไร่จากปี 2557 ซึ่งความสำเร็จเกิดจากการมีส่วนร่วมของภาครัฐภาคเอกชนและภาคประชาชนการจัดสรรที่ดินเพื่อการทำกินและการอยู่อาศัยให้ชุมชนดำเนินงานภายใต้คณะกรรมการนโยบายที่ดินแห่งชาติจัดที่ดินทำกินและที่ดินอยู่อาศัยได้เนื้อที่กว่า 25,000 ไร่จำนวน 567 ชุมชนในพื้นที่จังหวัดนครศรีธรรมราชและจังหวัดระนองซึ่งมีราษฎรได้รับประโยชน์มากกว่า 80,000 คนการปลูกฟื้นฟูป่าชายเลนเพื่อประโยชน์จากคาร์บอนเครดิตดำเนินการออกระเบียบกรมทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งว่าด้วยการปลูกและบำรุงป่าชายเลนสำหรับองค์กรหรือบุคคลภายนอกพุทธศักราช 2564 รวมถึงการจัดทำคู่มือการปลูกและการจัดสรรพื้นที่ดำเนินโครงการซึ่งปัจจุบันมีเนื้อที่ 34,284 ไร่และกรมมีเป้าหมายการปลูกป่าชายเลนเป็นเนื้อที่ 300,000 ไร่ภายในปี 2570 โครงการสวนพฤกษศาสตร์ป่าชายเลนนานาชาติร9จังหวัดจันทบุรีเพื่อเป็นแหล่งเรียนรู้และศึกษาวิจัยทางพฤกษศาสตร์ที่สำคัญรวมทั้งเป็นแหล่งท่องเที่ยวเชิงอนุรักษ์ปัจจุบันดำเนินการอยู่ในระยะที่ 3 พื้นที่ชายฝั่งประเทศไทยมีความยาวชายฝั่งทะเลประมาณ 3,151 กิโลเมตรประสบปัญหาการกัดเซาะชายฝั่ง 822 กิโลเมตรดำเนินการแก้ไขแล้ว 733 กิโลเมตรคงเหลือพื้นที่ยังไม่ได้ดำเนินการ 89 กิโลเมตรดำเนินการปักไม้ไผ่ชะลอความรุนแรงของคลื่นในพื้นที่หาดโคลนในพื้นที่ 13 จังหวัดรวมระยะทางไม้ไผ่ 103 กิโลเมตร ซึ่งจากการดำเนินงานที่ผ่านมาได้พื้นที่ป่าชายเลนเพิ่มขึ้นกว่า 400 ไร่นอกจากนี้ได้จัดทำร่างกฎกระทรวงกำหนดพื้นที่ใช้มาตรการในการป้องกันการกัดเซาะชายฝั่งสำหรับการดำเนินโครงการก่อสร้างกำแพงป้องกันคลื่นริมชายหาดและเขื่อนป้องกันตลิ่งริมทะเลและจัดทำร่างกฎกระทรวงกำหนดเขตพื้นที่เป็นพื้นที่ใช้มาตรการในการป้องกันการกัดเซาะชายฝั่งมีเป้าหมายการดำเนินงานปี 2561 ถึง 2565 จำนวน 34 ระบบหาดมลพิษและขยะทะเลด้านปัญหาขยะทะเลกรมมุ่งเน้นการรณรงค์จัดการขยะจากต้นทางพร้อมติดตั้งทุ่นดักขยะกว่า 23 จุดบริเวณปากแม่น้ำสายสำคัญสามารถดักขยะได้มากกว่า 5 ตันต่อปีจัดทำเรือเก็บขยะจำนวน 2 ลำเก็บขยะบริเวณชายหาดและเก็บขยะใต้น้ำร่วมกับนักดำน้ำจิตอาสาสถานการณ์มลพิษทางทะเลในห้วงเดือนมกราคมที่ผ่านมาเกิดเหตุการณ์น้ำมันรั่วไหลใน 2 พื้นที่ได้แก่จังหวัดชุมพรพบน้ำมันรั่วไหลออกมาจากเรือบรรทุกน้ำมันดีเซลซึ่งภายในเรือมีน้ำมันอยู่ประมาณ 500,000 ลิตรและจังหวัดระยองพบน้ำมันดิบรั่วไหลจากท่อใต้ทะเลของทุ่นรับน้ำมันดิบกลางทะเลบริเวณมาบตาพุธจำนวน 400,000 ลิตรทำให้เกิดคราบน้ำมันปนเปื้อนอยู่ในทะเลสร้างความเสียหายต่อทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งกรมได้ประสานงานร่วมกับหน่วยงานที่เกี่ยวข้องภายใต้แผนป้องกันและขจัดมลพิษทางน้ำเนื่องจากน้ำมันแห่งชาติดำเนินการติดตามและแก้ไขปัญหามลพิษทางทะเลโดยการนำทุ่นกักน้ำมันกักคราบฟิล์มน้ำมันไว้พร้อมทั้งสนับสนุนเรือทรัพยากรทางทะเลรถยนต์กำลังพลและอุปกรณ์ต่างๆเพื่อเฝ้าระวังสถานการณ์ฉุกเฉินอีกทั้งแจ้งเตือนให้ชาวประมงห้ามเข้าใกล้บริเวณพื้นที่เกิดเหตุจนทำให้สามารถควบคุมสถานการณ์ไว้ได้ทั้งนี้จากการตรวจสอบด้านระบบนิเวศทางทะเลเบื้องต้นไม่พบสารเคมีจากคราบน้ำมันในแหล่งปะการังหญ้าทะเลสิ่งมีชีวิตบนชายหาดและสัตว์ทะเลหายากพร้อมให้หน่วยงานในพื้นที่ดำเนินการเฝ้าระวังสถานการณ์ดังกล่าวอย่างใกล้ชิดสัตว์ทะเลหายากในช่วง 2 ปีที่ผ่านมาสัตว์ทะเลหายากในประเทศไทยสามารถพบเห็นได้มากขึ้นเต่าทะเลขึ้นวางไข่เพิ่มจำนวนกว่า500รังใน14จังหวัดพบพยูนกว่า261ตัวพบโลมาและวาฬกว่า 3,000 ตัวปะการังและหญ้าทะเลประเทศไทยมีพื้นที่แหล่งปะการังประมาณ 149,000 ไร่และแหล่งหญ้าทะเลประมาณ 159,829 ไร่โดยกรมได้ดำเนินการปลูกเสริมปะการัง150 ไร่ต่อปีและปลูกหญ้าทะเล60 ไร่ต่อปีนอกจากนี้ยังได้จัดทำปะการังเทียมเพื่อเสริมระบบนิเวศใต้ท้องทะเลให้มีความสมบูรณ์เป็นแหล่งท่องเที่ยวดำน้ำตลอดจนแหล่งประมงโดยในช่วงปี 2565 ได้ดำเนินการจัดทำและวางปะการังเทียมจำนวน 6 จังหวัดรวมทั้งสิ้น 4,663 แท่งพื้นที่คุ้มครองทางทะเลสำหรับปี 2564 ได้ประกาศกฎกระทรวงกำหนดให้หมู่เกาะกระจังหวัดนครศรีธรรมราชเป็นพื้นที่คุ้มครองทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งแห่งแรกนอกจากนี้คณะรัฐมนตรีเห็นชอบให้ประกาศพื้นที่เกาะโลซินจังหวัดปัตตานีเป็นพื้นที่คุ้มครองทางทะเลแห่งที่ 2โดยจะมีผลบังคับใช้วันที่ 28 กรกฎาคม 2565 เป็นต้นไปการมีส่วนร่วมหัวใจสำคัญในการดูแลทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งคือความร่วมมือของชุมชนและทุกภาคส่วนซึ่งปัจจุบันกรมมีชุมชนชายฝั่งที่ขึ้นทะเบียนแล้ว539 กลุ่มมีสมาชิกทั้งหมด 14,507 คนและมีอาสาสมัครพิทักษ์ทะเลจำนวน 24,812 คนความร่วมมือกับหน่วยงานต่างประเทศของกรมทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งในปี 2565 กรมเป็นเจ้าภาพจัดการประชุมระดับโลกเพื่อเปิดตัวทศวรรษแห่งสหประชาชาติว่าโดยวิทยาศาสตร์ทางมหาสมุทรเพื่อการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืนในภูมิภาคแปซิฟิกตะวันตกเพื่อแสดงเจตนารมณ์ร่วมกันของประเทศสมาชิกในการดำเนินการตามแผนปฏิบัติการ UN Ocean Decade ในภูมิภาคแปซิฟิกตะวันตกพร้อมทั้งสร้างความตื่นตัวให้กับผู้มีส่วนได้ส่วนเสียรวมถึงกระตุ้นให้ทุกภาคส่วนมีส่วนร่วมในความท้าทายในทศวรรษมหาสมุทรและบรรลุผลลัพธ์และวิสัยทัศน์แห่งทศวรรษกรมทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งได้ดำเนินการตามนโยบายของรัฐบาลและกรมพร้อมเป็นส่วนหนึ่งในการขับเคลื่อนภารกิจด้านการอนุรักษ์ฟื้นฟูส่งเสริมและพัฒนาทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งให้เกิดความอุดมสมบูรณ์และอยู่คู่กับประชาชนชาวไทยอย่างยั่งยืนสืบไป
This project is the holistic solutions that we try to solve and tackle the problem of global warming and plastic waste leakage to the environment. And this will help social economy around here. We will help create the carbon credit system that will benefit the community that live around here, and that will motivate the people to help us look after this mangrove. Of course, this project will help advance Dow sustainability target.